Okay, now we need to track your volunteer hours. So what you're going to do is every week you're going to send this information back to us. We need this for our insurance renewal paperwork. We fill out a big IRS 990 form in the fall, and we've got to compile all that stuff. I'm just kidding.
See people leaving.
That's the way it used to be. Okay. So the idea here is thank you for all you do. We want to make the bureaucratic administrative piece of this as streamlined as possible. Technology has helped us do that with that online registration. We want you to do what you do best, which is to be ride leaders, to find the routes. People look to you because you have some sort of spark that they look to you as a leader to put together a ride or to corral the people in the parking lot. And we recognize and want to provide all the support we can for you to do that. So thank you for all your due. My part is done. I think we didn't get a whole lot of questions. So people, the process is getting streamlined.
I have a question that's not directly related to this as much, but you said before that the bicycling community is getting smaller over the years. Is that literally true?
Oh God, yes.
Okay.
Oh God, yes.
Well, I know that the big rides like Tasser back in the old days was 5,000 people.
Yeah.
I'm talking about now we've got so many more organized rides. Is it true that there are fewer people?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, bicycle shops are going out of business. I mean, we've lost some around here as a result of that. You know, organizations, our peer organizations and some of the peer tours are going away because they can't find the people, the participants to keep them at sustainable levels, and they can't find the volunteers or people to implement these rides. So that's why we really value you people to provide, particularly those weekend rides. It makes it relevant.
Bringing new people in that wouldn't be riding otherwise.
Right. But I mean, you turn around and look like, you know, all the big 3 Colorado tours we used to go to: Pedal the Peaks, Ride the Rockies, Bike Tour of Colorado, gone. Bike Tour of Oregon, gone. Rain, almost gone. You know, yeah, sure. Some of these wonderful weekend things, the Horsey 100, Hilly 100, you know, our Tozerb is going to continue on. We're trying to build that in a sustainable format, much like the Knox County Biketoberfest. But there's no doubt things are shrinking. Even our numbers shrink. Last night, I looked at a picture of bike ride across Tennessee, which I think used to be pretty darn big. It was a group of 50 people, and they all looked like me and my wife if she were 10 years older.
Gray beards.
Yeah, it was kind of scary. So,
have there ever been any surveys or anything that are saying, because we were talking earlier about the younger demographic, and I mean, obviously, as you kind of look around in the room, it kind of shows, I mean, is it just not an interest? Is it a safety thing that, you know, people?
It's across organizations. The younger people are generally not joining organizations. They're participating things online. They're being a little more sedentary as well. Yeah.
let's go around. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know. I think the younger people too are not particularly into this kind of cycling,
Yeah.
right? Versus transportational cycling.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah.
I started riding seriously in the mid-90s, and I think I'm wondering, is it that not as many people are riding, or not as many people are doing rides like this?
A little both.
I think I see a lot more
Both.
people out than
Yeah.
I did back then when I started.
Yes. And we've got an actually pretty darn vibrant community here in Central Ohio. So we're fortunate. So,
Yeah, I mean, you do see a lot of people on scooters getting around, especially around campus.
and e-bikes have only extended the life of a lot of our cyclists. So,
Just quickly, what's your, would you say your reach is all over Ohio? If you're gonna register a ride, or is it? You trying to keep
For me,
Central
it's
Ohio?
nationwide.
Okay,
You know, through the magazines we advertise in and that,
oh,
I have people that come in from all over the US to do OTA.
so as far as, yes, participants, yes, we have Gobo, we have people come from, 36 states last year, Towser from 27 states. They used to come from all over, but as far as for leading rides, yes, we're talking about Central Ohio by and large.
And if we like took a group to Tennessee, that would be outside of our scope.
No, not at all. And as a matter of fact, we love and encourage, Blake and I talked about this some the other day, there's no reason, there are some other organizations like ours that are beginning to host tours. There's no reason if we're doing the Ohio Erie Trail twice a year and people are coming from all over the country, why don't we take, Penny runs a wonderful four-day creature on the Gap Trail in Western Pennsylvania. Well, why not take that, those 20 enthused people and say, hey, this year, let's go do the Katy Trail. Or, hey, this year we're gonna do the Katy Trail. Next year, we're gonna do whatever the one is up in South Dakota, the Mickelson Trail. There's no reason we can't do that sort of creature. I planted that seed with that guy right there, so talk to him. Thank you. I need to get into nuts and bolts.
Yeah, try to keep things moving here so we can get you out of here by 12. So kind of preparation, if you're going to be leading a ride, what kind of preparation might you be doing? And this is going to cover a little bit large rides and weekly rides. So not all of it may be exactly relevant to your ride. So Trish has brought along the LAB Smart Cycling Manual. Trish, you do have that with you? Yeah, they're out on the table outside.
There's a bunch of handouts.
There are a bunch of handouts out there.
Group riding.
You can get the Street Smarts online through that link. And again, I can send out an email with the slides or whatever later. And I also printed off a few copies of the Adventure Cycling handout. So if we run out, let me know and I can print off a few more copies. So you're welcome to pick that up. So in general, know your riders and what kind of ride you have. So consider your riders' abilities, their fitness levels, speeds. You may need multiple routes like the Tuesday group. They've got an A ride that goes a little longer and then the C, B, C, D go a little shorter. So you may have separate routes for people. If you can, try to avoid busy roads and busy intersections. Obviously, let's try to avoid road construction. Sometimes you come across it unexpectedly, like gravel, tar and chip. So you want to try to avoid those when possible. That's pretty much common sense. Avoid turns at the bottom of hills if you can. There was a fatality accident a number of years back on a ride where there was a hill, and I know I hit close to 40 miles an hour heading down the hill, and I'm looking ahead and I see there's a bend at the bottom, and I started riding my brakes. Someone didn't. So if you have that kind of hill on your ride and you can't avoid it, at least use road markings at the top and indicate to the riders that it's a dangerous hill. We'll go into road markings in a bit. Try to choose routes that have good sight lines. Oncoming cars shouldn't come over a hill and all of a sudden encounter a whole bunch of riders. Okay, so as much as you can, you want to avoid that. A little bit easier here in flat central Ohio than it is in the hills of Pennsylvania or West Virginia. Consistently mark your routes, potholes, and so on. So if you are marking your route, make sure you mark hazards that you have. If it's a long route, you might want to make sure that restrooms, food, and water are marked so that people know how far they have to go before they can tank up their water bottles. And obviously, the more familiar you are with the roads, easier it makes planning. So you may need to drive some of the road somewhere ahead of time. So general rules, these carry over. Consider varying the route from week to week within reasons. I lead the Der Dutchman ride, their breakfast. So we're always starting at the same point. We always have a fixed point at the restaurant. But for the rest, then we try to vary somewhat depending on the wind and interest and so on. Hey, we haven't done this way in a while. So it keeps people from getting bored. Most riders these days now have bike computers, but the new riders probably won't. So you want to be careful about keeping your groups together. Sometimes when I've had slower riders, I will ride with a slow group, and we'll talk about this a little more later. And if we have some faster riders, I may assign an experienced rider to take that group and go on ahead. And that way we can keep both groups happy. Route planning, consider the weather. Are you riding into the wind, or you want a tailwind on the way back? If you're going to be publishing the ride on like Ride with GPS, plan the route a day ahead so people have a chance to download it. When you are riding in a crosswind, we tend to form echelons like you see in the picture. But be aware that an echelon like this in central Ohio might not be a good idea during rush hour. Allow people to get past. And I have it on one of the slides that one of my mottos is that a frustrated driver is a dangerous driver. Now, granted, some drivers get out of bed frustrated, but at least, try not to overly frustrate the drivers. Give them a chance to get past. Yeah.
I'd also suggest considering sun angle, so especially in like shoulder season when the sun's going down sooner and whatnot. Keep in mind that's going to blind drivers if they're driving into the sun.
Right. So yeah, if you're riding into the sun, that means that the driver overtaking you is also driving into the sun, and will have a harder time seeing you. So Aaron, do you want to take over about some of the route planning, or because this is going to go into Strava and so on?
That's fine.
I got a quick question.
Yeah.
On your group sites, you talk about frustration, and anytime I see people posting, oh, this driver was frustrated because there's more cameras, like bike dash.
Yeah, I've got a slide later on. I suggest keeping group sizes down to maybe 5 or 6, maybe certainly less than 10 at a time, so that drivers have a chance to pass a group and there's a gap where they can pull in for oncoming traffic. Yeah.
Thanks.
So, yeah, do what you can to give them a chance to get past. Okay, they may have to leapfrog several groups, but at least they can make some progress.
Okay, so I'm going to be up here, hopefully a relatively short period of time for the first section here. Route making and publishing. So, I think generally nowadays you can do it all online, but we're going to go through that in a second. Ride with GPS and stuff like that, it can provide turn-by-turn instructions even on a phone. So I'll show you how that's possible. I think generally now, especially for the weekly rides, that I don't think it's not practical to provide a handout, physical paper anymore. But if you do have a route that's the same every week, you should consider marking that route anyways. It's always helpful for new riders that show up and so forth. We'll talk about more of that later. Okay. So here's there's lots of ways to make routes. I think Ride with GPS is probably the best one. Strava's somewhat close, but and those are great for making routes for road rides generally. Komoot is good for off-road. I don't think that's really applicable to a lot of people here, but just to provide some extra detail there. And so, generally, once you have these digital routes, you can upload these to your bike computer, your Wahoos, your Garmin's, your Karoos, and so forth. And those provide turn-by-turn instructions essentially right in front of you, and they beep at you and so forth. I got lost on a route on a ride, an organized ride, and it was about 2 miles off course, and that was the day I was like, I had to pull out the paper map and look at it, and wonder where I'm at. So that was the day that I bought my bike computer. I would say that phones are okay. Phones fall off bikes and then they cause people to crash. And that's not great. Phones also die. So, you do want to, it's not the best thing to use, but I understand that people do that as well. So if you do have people with phones on their bikes, make sure they're really well mounted there. They're not going to fall off and cause trouble. All right. So there's two ways to do things with Ride with GPS. So you can do it as a normal person. If you do it as a normal person, you can have a free account. All that's great. You can share your rides with you can share your routes with everybody. And as long as they have a bike computer, they can download the routes, and they'll have everything they need. They cannot use their phone to have turn-by-turn instructions.
Damn, it
Oh, sorry. You do have to pay, or you have to pay for it. I'm assuming people don't really want to pay for it. Okay.
That's all I used.
So COP has a organizational account. And if you make a route using their organizational account, then people that can use then people can use their phone for free, and they can use the get the turn-by-turn instructions. Only problem with that is it's a huge application, and so if they show up to the ride with nothing, you're probably not going to be able to get them to download it remotely and install everything, get everything set up all in a few minutes before the ride starts. So just consider that, I guess.
You don't need a paid Ride with GPS account to use that. You get audio turn by turn.
So yeah. If the route was made with an organizational account, the rider can use it for free with no special account.
You just can't create your own.
What's that?
As an individual, you have to have a paid account to create your own routes.
You can make your own. You can make your own routes without a paid account. So
You can't share it.
you can share them. Yeah, you can share them. So it really only comes down to, well, there's a couple things that are different, right? So if you have an individual account, you cannot if you share it with somebody, they will not get turn-by-turn instructions. If you use an organizational account and you make the route, they will get turn-by-turn instructions, whether the rider has paid for an account or not.
How do we get access to the organization?
Talk to Jeff.
Weekly rides at outdoor-pursuits.org or office@outdoor-pursuits.org. That's throw that one.
The only thing I'll say is
You definitely need to be on our ride calendar for us to give you access.
So that's what I use when I make Tuesday, Thursday rides. I do all the B's and the C's on the organizational account. And I do the A's on my private account, because I'm cluttering up. That's getting it to be a mess, mostly because of me. But then because I get yelled at if I don't make it right, then people yell at me like, I can't use my phone tonight because I didn't make it on the organizational account. So as long as you do that, or if the rider pays, then they always have turn-by-turn instructions on everything.
Yeah, I pay for it.
Yeah, I'm cheap. And then if you're if you're an individual person that you haven't paid for it, you cannot edit the cue sheet. So generally it makes a cue sheet fine for you. So, but yeah, those are the big things. So yeah, this isn't, this is more maybe for the one-day event type of people. It's probably still a good idea to provide a handout if you can, and you might have a map, and then how far to go, or how far to go for this route, or how what miles you should turn at, and all the directions and so forth. So you can make these yourself, or if you have organizational accounts or paid accounts, they'll make these for you. All right. So this is the one that was created by Ride with GPS on its own. Has a one whole page for a map, and then the cue sheet and another small map on the other side. And the first one here, this one I just screenshot, pasted in PowerPoint, made my own slides, made my own cue sheet. So, all right. So how to plan a route? That's that's always an interesting question. I guess first you should be familiar with the roads that you're going to make the route on. Generally, that's a really good idea. You can definitely talk to others, or other people will usually volunteer information to you. They're like, oh, that was a bad road you put us on tonight. Another thing to do. Let's see if I can switch over to that. And if I drag this, oh no, I'm gonna have to
the right.
to the right. Oh yeah, it's kind of big. All right. Well, it is what it is. So another thing you can use is a Strava heat map, and so this will you can change the colors, all sorts of stuff. But so roads that people ride on will be some, in this case, bright white, and roads that people don't ride on, like that one, I think it's 160 or 42. Then they're dark colored. So you can use this to find out, where other people typically ride, right? So these are all of my normal haunts. So this can be a good idea as well. I think Strava.
GPS also has.
So yeah.
It's a paid feature though.
It's in our organizational account.
Well, this one, the Strava one is generally free unless you want to have like your personal heat map, I think. All right, now I have to.
Can you zoom out?
It's cool. That
Yeah, you can
go closer to Columbus and see the bike trail.
Oh yeah, but this is where I ride.
It's just interesting. I mean, it's interesting how you
Yeah,
can see the east side.
Yeah, I mean the
There's the one tangent.
yeah, so that's that one, right? So yeah, so you can just use this to
Even if you don't pay for Strava, you can use this.
yes.
Yeah.
So that's also a good option. And I've even resorted to looking at Google Maps and seeing how many cars I see on the road while I'm when the camera was taking the picture. It's okay.
If you're riding around rush hour.
Well, yeah. Yeah, and so then you can also, if you really don't have familiarity, you really want to know, you can actually drive the route, right, and make sure that things are okay, or ride the route. And look, what you're not going to see is, like, if you're going up a hill, you got to turn left turn, and cars aren't going to see you coming, they're coming cresting over, stuff like that. You want to make sure that you're not putting people in crazy situations. All right, so there's another picture of the Strava heat map. I think, let's see here.
There is a road marking handout on the table, if you are one who are going to be painting marks.
I have a few copies for people who know they will be making marks in the after the show.
Oh, this is so large. I don't know. Everything's large.
There you go.
So, this is what I typically would use for planning routes, and it's really easy, right? So, thankfully, it starts right where we start, right? You just go through and click where you wanna ride. We'll ride backwards this today. Contrast is quite bad on this computer, right? So you just and if you mess something up, like, oh, I want to actually go over here, you can add. Right, you can change the route however you want to. I do this like 4 times a week.
We appreciate it.
Oh, now it's gonna get messed up. It does get messed up sometimes. Oh, there it goes, finally. Right, so you don't want to be on 42. So anyways, you make yourself a route. Here's a cue sheet that's cut off on the side over here. you save this, and then you can share this with people.
I had a suggestion.
Yeah.
Can you find another route real quick just to open up that menu?
What do you want?
Can you open that kind of go back to that route you were just planning? There's the little yellow guy in the bottom right, and you can actually extract that.
Right.
Use that to immediately see the street view. That way you don't have to go to.
So you can do Google Street View through Rider GPS.
Yeah, exactly. So that can be really useful.
Interesting.
The same is true if you move your.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can definitely there's a lot of options to use as well. Typically if I'm planning longer routes, I'll have Google Maps open so I can figure out where all the gas stations are and things like that just for stops. It will tell you some of the stuff in here as well, but you don't have a search function.
Do you know of a way?
No.
That's what I thought too, but it is.
This is right with GPS that you're showing.
This is right with GPS. This is my personal account, but I can go to, there's an organizational account too. It's kind of a little bit painful, but
And it's nice, it shows the elevation across the line too, so
Yep.
especially if you're talking about taking newer riders out, that's one thing to look at.
The other thing too that is really nice about Ride with GPS, if you've never done a route, you can get at a start location and an end location, and it'll take you on it'll plot it for you and take you on the routes that are mostly rode by cyclists. But then you need to always set the ride to make sure, and then you can also do it to the return, and I do that. And 90% of the time, it's a pretty good route. I'm usually very comfortable with what they route because they use the maps and everything.
Yeah.
I did an out and back route in Ride with GPS last fall, and it caused a few problems because it was down in Hockham Hills, and some of the roads changed names. It worked fine on Ride with GPS. That's what I used.
Yeah.
It didn't work on people's garments because it didn't pick up so I fixed it. I went in and manually put in the road transitions.
Okay.
Because it didn't pick those up, but it is an awesome feature. It saved a ton of time.
Well,
That's the ride for sure.
Yeah, and you can edit the cue sheet.
I'm pretty sure Garmin uses the exact cue sheet.
Yeah, Garmin, it did not work for the people with Garmin because it didn't know that, okay, this is Jack Run here, but up there, now it's Norton Ridge, even though you're on the same road.
I haven't had that. Yeah, I haven't really had that problem, I guess, before. So it's interesting. Okay. Yeah.
When planning around, when things get messed up, which you'll mess it up, sometimes the easiest thing to do is to erase it and start over because you know what your route's going to be at that point. You sort of planned it, but if you try to edit it, you'll end up at some point or another. You'll put in a midpoint that is basically go up the road, go back down the road, then go back up the road.
Yeah.
And
I do that every year.
Yeah. You'll discover it when you're on the ride.
Well, so you can definitely look at the cue sheet and look for any U-turns.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a good idea to make sure that you haven't you're not going over the same route 3 times, the same part of the road 3 times. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, and there is an undo function up there as well. So
yeah, I think that's really important is to manually go through the cues and see if they make sense.
Yeah.
Because it'll put bad cues in.
It will actually you can do a review your cues, and it literally takes you step by step through each one. It shows you exactly, it blows it up and shows you that corner. So if you go down to where it says review cues, where you're going down.
Yeah, you can click through them too.
There too, which is really nice.
You gotta stay for that one.
Yeah. The desktop app is more limited than the mobile app.
Really?
The normal, the premium account.
You gotta pay for it though.
No, it's
the mobile app,
yes,
you
you're
get
right.
some of the
You're right.
premium stuff for free. It's very bizarre.
Really?
Yeah, exactly.
So heat maps you can get on a non-premium account if you're using the mobile app, but then it's creating a route on mobile. Obviously, it's a much different experience. Not having a mouse on a large screen. So
yeah,
you're gonna do what I was intended to do on an iPad or something.
yeah, it's frustrating for me to try it on a phone. Okay.
It's the same.
If people are interested in like learning more about Ride with GPS and plan routes, I know like Ohio Gravel Grinders also has an organizational account with them. They've had their staff come and do like, let us show you around Ride with GPS. So I imagine they would be willing to do the same for COP. You give kind of a training on how to build routes. Use the tool.
Yeah, I could spend you know, a couple hours on it probably. I make like five a week.
Yeah,
yeah.
If you do that, we're not going to be out of here by 12 o'clock.
Exactly. So I'm trying to go really quick because we don't want a 10-hour event here. Okay. We've talked about like actual physical handouts, right? So I think that's probably covered. We're gonna talk about marking things later, so we won't talk about that. Let's see here.
Hey, Aaron, just a comment that I appreciate that you share the routes on the Facebook account every week.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good best practice. So I don't know if other groups do that or not, but
generally they do. Yeah.
Okay. Makes it easy for new riders to find them and load them onto their bike computers.
Yeah, a lot of new riders you typically ignore that, but that's fine.
Well, but I usually tell the new riders that's where you can do it.
You're right.
Every week, and get it on your phone or on your bike computer.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So if you're marking routes if it's on a bike trail, like a I don't know who owns those trails, but you can't mark on the trails. You can mark on the roads outside, right, between, if the trail's going across the road, you can mark on the road, but you can't mark on the bike path unless you get some special permission. And, I don't think they give special permission.
You can use the stick-on, like the route arrows, as long as you go back and take them up after.
Okay.
But you can't leave them.
Yeah, so keep people in the loop, right? Especially if like a big one-day event, you're going to want to start talking to the county. You're going to talk to the police, and generally let people know what you have planned. If you want to stop someplace, you're going to want to tell them. You're going to want to ask them for permission if you can go there.
Police departments use Ride with GPS.
What's that?
Do the police departments and them use Ride with GPS?
I doubt it. Why?
Why do they give them the link to it?
Oh. Yeah, I mean they can look. You can definitely share it with them, and they can see what your route is planned. It's probably an easy way to give that information to them. Yeah.
Also useful for a county engineer to know where not to put tar and chip. They have sometimes taken that into account and held off a week on green cars.
Pedal with Pete was about 3 inches. They did it the night before the ride, even though the people had asked them not to.
Yeah, sometimes
they'll do what they want still, but they might help.
Yeah.
Strava sells them more data.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Okay, so you want to stop and talk, because we're going to talk about marking routes more. You want to have a break for a second, or I don't know who's going to.
Yeah. Why don't we take a 5-minute break now, and I'll try to bring us all back in a few minutes.
Take care of business.
You want to talk about marking routes?
I don't know what.
Okay.
Right. Okay, road markings. Doesn't everybody love road markings? Quickly, are there any quick complaints about road markings on rides that use them? Yes.
The turns are marked too close to the actual turn.
Amen.
Yeah, you need to put those back. Make sure you hit on that.
And that's coming up.
Okay.
You're thinking ahead. Good.
The last time I did pedal with Pete, I had not gotten navigation software for my bike yet. And the markings were very confusing because there were markings that were the same mark that weren't part of that day's ride.
Yeah.
And I realized afterwards they've gotten lazy because they're counting on people having Ride with GPS in their car.
So they should have had
that's what I took.
Yeah. So they should, on their road, they should have had 2-letter P's with it or something.
Something
to separate them.
Different color.
Yeah, it was, there's a ride, here's the go, or maybe many. two counties had loop rides, which shared county line road. And at the end of the day, the SAG people had to haul people from the other ride back to the starting.
Well, there was another mark that got paved over between the time they marked it and when the ride happened, so no impact. But, yeah.
I was just gonna say too, it kind of be cognizant of where you're marking as far as like how much traffic is traffic gonna drive over that arrow and or weather.
Yeah.
So sometimes like a sign might be better, or a sign might be needed in addition to a mark on the road.
You're thinking ahead. Yes, they're all on the slides.
Can you just explain the legality of marking on the road and what materials to use?
Legal, I've never heard that it's illegal.
Okay. But you can't just paint on the road with like a roller. Can you?
Years ago, when I was speeding around one day and my wife was driving the car, and I was in a town, Baltimore, I think, and the cop stopped and asked me, what's going on? He explained, he said, oh, okay, good. And he knew that there was a ride coming through.
It's good to know, okay.
So it was fine for him, you know?
Yeah.
And,
It's not gonna consider graffiti then in that case.
What about materials? Like, is there a particular kind of paint?
Yeah. The office has the paint issue.
Okay.
You can get that checked out, get out, and that checked out.
This is a toughie. If you've changed the route from last year, you have to go and erase last year's markings if it's gonna if it's a deviation, and otherwise, you can find your whole group making a turn on a faded arrow and following faded arrows for the rest of the afternoon, never to return.
One more story? Okay. Hank did the math here. You on a fast section or anything, you want to have at least 3 seconds. At least, probably.
No, you want more, you want 8 to 10 seconds.
8 to 10 seconds. Gotcha, all right. Had a question back here?
No.
Oh. All right. Oh, you, okay. Allow 100 yards per lane shift or being ready to make the left turn itself if you have one more shift to make. Okay, what football game was that recently where somebody intercepted a pass near the goal line and ran most of the way?
Jack Sawyer.
Pardon?
Jack Sawyer.
Jack Sawyer. Okay, well, bring Jack Sawyer with you when you get here, and go to the intersection where you want to turn and tell him go as far as you ran to up there with the spray can and then spray the arrow. Right. Many roads will have these kinds of signs, which is very neat and useful, and hopefully they'll have the name of the road that it's going to, and that should match what's on your already published map. So put your arrow right next to that sign in the road. That way the riders will associate the upcoming turn with this road, which should be easy to see, maybe even a road sign at the intersection. And don't put the paint on the tire tracks, otherwise you'll see repeating arrows down the road.
But they'll also wear off.
They will wear off and everything, yeah. So good places right between the tire tracks. Sort of where many Sharrows are, you see in city streets, they put those between the tire tracks so they don't get wore out. Okay, there's, like I said, people have complaints about arrows not far enough ahead. We discovered that. For turning, well, you have your first warning arrow, and then you want one more just before the intersection. People say, okay, I think I'm turning here. Yes, there's the arrow, and then they can make the left turn. And after the turn, it's usually wise to put one more arrow some distance after the turn, because after you turn, people are, negotiating how they're going to be with other people and whatever. If it's too soon, they may miss it. So you want it some distance after the turn, put that confirming arrow, and then people will feel good about continuing on, hoping you don't have to turn around and hunt. Okay, straight through confirming arrows. If you're going to go straight for a long time, how many straight arrows do you do? There was one ride I was on where the route meter just painted, next arrow, 10 miles. Okay, everybody felt good. Okay, 10 miles.
We didn't miss that one.
And mentally recorded, well, how soon, 9 miles, start looking for the next arrow. That was on Route 37 on the Old Jones.
There was a slide earlier, and I forget whose presentation it was in, but it said something about try to avoid excessive left turns.
Yeah, that's because you have to, it's
Talk about
more
that.
difficult. I mean, when I'm getting in my car to go to the grocery store, I try to find my route so I don't have so many left turns either. It's just easier to make right.
Yeah, that was the same.
It's partly, if you're going to make a loop, try to go clockwise rather than counterclockwise. That way you're not turning across traffic or having to take the lane. So sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not. But if you have a choice, try to minimize the left turns.
And when
Because if people trying to pass you, right, way around you on the left, cars coming at you, you're trying to cross in front of all that, so you don't try to avoid it.
Yeah.
Just remember, Michigan left-hand turns are 3 rights.
New Jersey jump turns too.
Yeah.
It's difficult to
They're
do it.
crossing, they're making a left-hand turn, crossing over top of another road. It's 3 right-hand turns.
Yeah.
I've also done on occasion, if you have a small group and there's a crossing intersection and you need to make a left turn, you can turn right onto that crossroad, wait for them to traffic and then cross, at 90 degrees rather than making a left turn. But I mean, it depends on the situation. You kind of do what is safest.
And point out to your riding group, when they're making a left turn, always look behind before you execute the turn, because there are some cars who will still try to pass you. They'll think they're going faster.
We had a car pass a pace line and it was halfway turned and the rest of us were still in the lane and came through on the left.
Right. And if a car tries to stop and let you make a left turn, then you can't see the traffic behind the car. Right. Especially if it's two lanes, because you can't see what's in the other lane behind that car. So if you're leading the group, just sit there. The other car may say, come on. No, because you don't want to get run over by somebody that just happens to come up behind that car. And if it's a minor intersection, just one, I've even seen them in the middle of the intersection. It's just, for making people feel good. I don't do them if it's a driveway. I don't do it if it's a dead end road. If they turn into a dead end road, they'll learn pretty quick that they need to turn around and get back out on the road. Okay. Road hazards. Potholes. Dead stump in the middle of the road. There was a song years ago. Now, does COP still have orange paint? Bright orange? And I always like to use that for the X's, the hazard mark.
So no, I haven't marked.
Okay.
I hope Jeff, where we're
White, yellow, and orange are the best.
White, yellow, orange. You said orange. Okay, I use orange.
Jeff, we have all those, or you got all those?
Amazon is a wonderful thing.
We were just told that you supplied it, so is that different?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, white and yellow for directions, orange for hazards, in front of potholes, rough railroad tracks. Okay, ruts. Okay, cracks in the road. Especially if, like, for example, if it's a cement road and there's a crack between 2 slabs of cement, narrow tires can drop into it. And I have been on rides where there were fatalities for that kind of a situation. And it's like it's going fast at the downhill, dropped into the rut, and tumble over. So do the orange paint visibly around the spot, and people can see it coming up and go on to one side or on the other side. And if you have to go and do a downhill with the hazard at the bottom, mark it at the top of the hill. Stop sign at bottom, gravel at bottom, especially
Turn at bottom.
and turn at bottom. And if you paint it the weekend before and it rains on Friday night, there might be gravel washed out there. you don't have time in the morning to go sweep that off, so make that so people, don't go zooming too fast down that hill. And if you have a big enough ride to have an easel, anybody still have an easel? And current big copies of the map on the easel with colored lines, even point out, I've seen them even at some rides, it says dog. I hear somebody is known to have a loose, and then, well, we've had riders in Columbus.
Yeah.
We got, and I helped once on a ride, a dog ran out in front of a rider on the down, on the fall challenge. I waited for an hour until somebody came and picked up their bike. So that they wouldn't have it, so. Okay, don't use blue.
Somebody did once.
Well, you can't see it even if it's not reading, it's difficult. Blue means the water company, there's a water pipe underneath. And make sure they're large enough to see clearly. And I think we mentioned this, if different bike clubs or different organizations have the same arrows, you may want to put a letter for what is associated with their ride. Go-By just uses A's. And they're the only ride that doesn't. So you have a letter A, which is very convenient to see. Cuddle Peak should put P's with theirs to help people keep them straight.
Yeah. One ride, the guy took a sponge, cut it in the shape of an arrow, and then stamped, but it was only this big. So it wasn't big enough to see.
Now, well, there are two arrows. They're side by side. That was Dick Seaboogie.
Yeah.
Oh, well, no, this is a different.
This is a different
one.
You see any with two arrows side by side, that was Dick Seaboogie. Yes, he had the paint in
Stencils don't work very well, it's just a lot easier to strike. In the city of Columbus, looks foul. The skyline with the Bike to Sea bus, it turned into like.
Any questions yet? One.
If you're using just a can of spray paint, like what kind of shape would you draw out? Like, or what size? Like, this length?
Dinner plate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If it's this long and the arrows this big.
So about size of a sheet of paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I noticed you don't say don't use red, but don't use red.
I said orange.
I know, but I said you didn't say don't use red.
Oh, yeah, that's for electricity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also, I can't see them.
Oh, yeah.
Red, oh,
Yeah.
green,
Damp roads, wet roads make darker colors hard and impossible to see. White and yellow are your best.
Can you see the orange? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good. So when there's a rough track, triple X,
The orange for
you
heavy.
know that you have to step up, stand up off yourself.
When it's wet, there's especially just my circumstance, Meadowhouse Centric, you probably marked this right. About 6 years, my wife was brand new. We had just gotten a tandem. We were just getting a feel for it. Coming down, it was nasty weather, sleet, snow, rain, this a whole gambit. Coming down pretty fast, left turn to get over the river under a bridge, and we're on a metal graded bridge. And the front tire starts going out, and so I said, well, I'll get over to the side. Well, then we're going to go over into the river. So that's no good. We made it just barely. And that would have been really hard to go down on that stuff.
Was there any verbiage on the road saying?
And I was complaining about it, and it was marked. Be careful, left-hand turn up ahead, metal bridge.
Okay.
So you did, and whoever marked it, they did the right thing. But just be aware, especially in wet conditions, those kind are very treacherous, and it was properly marked. So, but you just don't think about some things.
Yeah.
You just turn left, and you're on this metal bridge, and it's got grates on it. You don't see too many of them anymore, but boy, they sure are tricky when it's wet.
Well, if you give a lecture at the start of your ride, just point out, say, look at every road marking.
He said that earlier.
Is it ours or not?
Yeah.
Your comment.
The other thing,
I wasn't
if it is
sure.
wet weather, and you might tell people, watch out for steel plates.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just tell each rider, you know,
Yeah.
when you see a steel plate, be really careful.
Also, just the, on the side of the road, the white strips, when it's, you know, this is not marking, but this is just general road safety. It's like, stay off of them. Cause they get really slick when it's wet out, you know?
Yeah. By the way, those white lines at the edge of the road were invented here in Columbus.
Oh, really?
Years ago. The roads here were had a big Z turn, and everybody in the morning when it was dark would go off. The road. So they painted them there, and everybody made it here for that.
You as ride leader have the responsibility and the opportunity to inform people at the beginning of a ride about a particular hazard that might be there. If it's a weeknight ride and you're on a piece of road, you know, at the beginning, you could say, hey, look, tonight we're gonna go on such and such. They just did chip and seal, so be careful, blah, blah, blah. Or just rain, watch for the turns. If you're on one of the one-day rides, top of Ohio, etc., it's in our markings. The ride leader will say, you know, be careful of this stretch of road, new potholes, new construction, metal bridge, covered bridge, et cetera, et cetera. So you as a ride leader have the opportunity in advance of the ride to educate people what might be there, and then we've got on the road stuff. So
And documented, you know, so
Put
that.
hazards in a ride with GPS route.
Yeah,
You can.
that could be
put
included. Oh,
hazards
yeah,
in a
sure.
route.
Yeah, put an image of a dog by a pond.
Well, it will call it out to you on the audio.
Okay.
From like,
Is there one over here? Okay, I have a handout that has more details about this. The one thing, when you're out there painting, remember, you are looking unusual.
Yes.
All right. Now, utilities will do it, they know how to do it, of course, they're wearing, you know, colored vests, so maybe, you know, wear some bright colors or those color vests. Yes.
This is, last year, I did have somebody else with me, but it was my husband actually. He would help me mark several routes last year. And because one time he went with me, he decided he bought legal flashing lights for the back of the car.
Oh.
And I had a vest on, and he would pull it behind me with the flashing lights while I marked. Because if you're marking routes, there's a ton, you need to really be aware before you even step out in that road to mark these routes. So if you've got somebody that can go with you, that is an ideal situation, because you do need to be very careful and aware of your surroundings. And I felt that was the safest I had felt marking roads ever. It was really very nice. It was also nice to have the company, because especially if you're marking a route that's 100 miles, you're doing it all week long, and you mark like, you know, 50 miles of it, you're still 50 miles from home. So it's nice to have somebody with you, have an extra pair of eyes.
Yeah, so you got extra lights besides the cars, a bunch of lights?
They sat on top of my car.
On top of the
On
little side.
And they were
We have some of
yellow.
those
They're
in the
legally,
office.
you have to be careful, because they can't be like it can't look like police lights. So they were white and yellow flashing lights, and they were really nice.
we have some in the office
Okay.
for GoBo.
Exactly.
So if there's any interest or need, give us a holler.
Okay, it was really nice. We also had like a metal thing that slapped on the car that said SAG, which was just kind of we really weren't saggy, but it was just another way to make people cautious that we were doing something there on the road.
Yeah. Look and listen for oncoming traffic, especially between that curve. And now with the electric cars, you really gotta look, because they make less noise. Okay, yeah, you're unusual. And so you want to make yourself, well, visible and yield to them that they're going to come through. You know, just stand back and you have another 20 seconds to go out there and paint the arrow quickly, and then run back to the edge and see if it looks right and everything. When you were doing this, did the person painting get out of the car or open the door?
No, he would pull over as far off the road as he could, or maybe
Okay.
like in a driveway prior to that, but just sitting there. So anybody coming up on that side of the road could see them flashing, maybe somebody would be in the road. It's just like a little heads up. But no, I was marking, I was in the passenger seat. I would hop out, go mark the road, get back in, then we would drive. And it made it nice too, because when you're marking like the prior, the turn, and then the confirmation, if you're by yourself, you park somewhere safe,
Mhm.
you mark, you walk, you turn the corner, you mark again, so it just made it a lot.
Yeah. I had, years ago, I did it at least once where I taped a bunch of newspaper on the doors and everything and just open the door and spray like that. It worked for that ride.
Yes.
But I don't know if you don't like doing that. Others have, especially if they're riding with thumbs, right, they're recumbent.
Yeah.
The paint will fit in your water bottle. Right? The paint can fit in your water bottle.
It will, yeah. Okay, so anyway, I have a few copies of a handout with more details about this, and if there's not enough, Frank can print out a few more copies. Peter should know more than the average rider.
He thinks I know more than the average.
Pretty soon I'll do a show to tell with my school.
So we are trying to record this. I don't know how it'll come out, but we'll see. Looks like the battery in this mic is starting to go. Get it untangled here. Anyway, all right. Okay, so yeah, you should know more than an average rider. If somebody gets a flat, obviously you should be able to help them fix it. I normally carry an extra 1 or 2 inner tubes in my bag, as well as a patch kit. I've got my CO2 cartridges, as well as a small frame pump to help inflate tires. I carry a couple of quick links for 8, 10, and 11 size chains, gear chains. So I try to keep a small amount of stuff, and I've got my little multi-tool as well. So I try to carry that with me as I'm leading a ride.
I gave you the mic to see.
Oh.
So for those who are tired of looking at PowerPoint, here's a show and tell. I bring my own size. There's too many different sizes of inner tubes. Everybody should have had their own size with them. Hank was talking about a multi-tool.
Yeah.
Which has everything you need, including a chain tool to break a chain.
Nice.
All different kinds of metric Allen wrenches, X wrenches, even a little attachment with a like a Torx type thing, you know. The disadvantage is you can only use one at a time. If you need 2, well, then you need a separate screwdriver or something. If you need something else along with it.
So we've had actually a couple of broken chains on rides, and one time I didn't have the right size quickly. But
couldn't you just take out the one and join them together, one shorter? I've always done
there was a sag wagon, so they had stuff.
And I grew up in the day when there were no quick links. It was the master link when my old Schwinn as a boy. But I've always learned how to just use whichever link, push it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody who's riding should have this with them, and if you help a rider change a flat and they don't have these, good instruction time to do that, and maybe even have them do it so they learn how to do it.
I would get orange tire levers because the black ones grow legs and scurry off into the grass.
I thought they evaporated faster.
I forgot to stick one in here, but bring a couple of those dishcloths with you and lay that on there so that everything you work with is laying on the dishcloth and does not get lost as easy. Tire patches. Have a couple, you can give one to the guys so that they can take it with them. And then screwdrivers. couple of small wrenches.
What's that weigh? It says more than the average rider. And it's working on the officer's toolkit. Sharp knives on it.
That's all that ever been in there.
The tape. Duct tape is handy, but you can't bring that whole big roll with you. So take a short piece of pencil and wrap some of the handyman's secret weapon around it.
For the road rash? For road rash?
No. No, that would too much. So, because the ladies can't find you handsome, at least they can find you know that your hand if you have it. That's a red green thing.
Yeah. We actually had a fellow with a tubeless tire that it developed an aneurysm. The fabric separated. He had this huge bulge in the tire. We duct taped it and made it 10 miles to the next town.
Nice. And while they sell these too, you can take that on the inside or a little piece of duct tape. It's diagonal
that's a
because they're diagonal ply.
That's a boot.
Boot, yes.
Yeah.
Or a $1 bill.
Yeah.
Or a $5.
I pulled up a sag wagon on Towser, 3 men, 1 flat tire. Only one of them had a $100 bill. The others, they had no cash with them. But this is a valuable piece. We actually have an old piece of tire cut in our kit. That's a valuable thing.
Oh, yeah, and if the rider does not have this on their frame, tell them, get to the bike shop and buy themselves a pump.
So in addition to that, I carry zip ties, rubber nitrile gloves, paper towels, and 2 medical kits.
I was gonna say a latex glove because most of the time it's gonna be a rear wheel that you chain and you're gonna be handling that greasy chain.
Yep.
That's where they make bike shorts.
It's the rear wheel that's more likely to get a flat from a sharp object in the road. Because the front wheel bumps it, sets it up for the rear tire to go over it. And also in rain and wetness, it's more likely because you got lubrication. Remember high school chemistry? You had to put a piece of glass through a rubber stopper, wet it at first with water so it would slip through easier. Same thing, something's gonna puncture your tire. It's the weather, it's not the time you want to be changing the flat tire when it's all cold.
Yeah,
I just want to add this, like, if you have a rider that has full-time wheels, usually I don't carry this, but you never know, a lot of people might have that for these wheels, so it's cool to have.
Yeah.
We all, when we were sagging on Pelotonia, we all suggested carrying a small wrench because a lot of people are gonna won't have a quick release.
They have the bolts tight, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And a spoke wrench, if you know how to use it.
Spoke, yeah, although trying to adjust spokes on the road is a little tough. Usually it's a broken spoke. And then you're in trouble.
You adjust around it.
Yeah.
It's
Well, yeah,
easy, people. All spokes go like that. When you tighten a spoke from the top,
I can't see you. Thank you.
like, the spokes go from a hub out, the other way, right?
Yeah.
Other way.
There you go.
If you tighten this, when you tighten, it strengthens and pulls the rim that way. Okay, that's the only thing you need to know. And if you just think from the top, if you tighten righty-tighty, so tighten this way, it's gonna pull that little piece of the rim that way. And all it takes is a little half a turn. Tighten one way, loosen the other.
Yeah, even if you have a broken spoke, never go more than a half turn per spoke.
Yeah.
Work your way both sides of it. You can pull it back so that you can ride it.
It'll straighten it enough, but you don't, if you do too much, now you get a different radius.
Yeah, you ruin the wheel.
And when one goes, that's a sign that others are susceptible.
Yeah.
Any more questions or comments?
That's actually, we were just kind of, I mean, all seriousness, I mean, this is great. If you're a AAA member, they will come pick you up. It's like, in all seriousness, that they will, if you find yourself in a spot, so.
Yeah, they won't pitch you, but they'll
It's part
get
of
you
your
somewhere
membership,
safe.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.